All right, welcome to today's verdict, where legal issues meet real-world consequences. Coming up in today's verdict, starting this April, New York is rolling out a major change for job seekers. Most employers will no longer be allowed to check your credit history when hiring, promoting, or making workplace decisions. We'll break down what this new law means for employees and employers alike and what you need to know to navigate it. Then, as immigration situations continue to change, many families are facing uncertainty about their status in the United States. We'll sit down with an immigration attorney to take a closer look at the challenges faced, from temporary protections for Haitian nationals to navigating legal pathways and staying safe from enforcement actions. We bring you the stories, the experts, and the advice you need to navigate the issues that matter most. So stay with us. Today's verdict starts right now. All right, hello, welcome to today's verdict, the interactive show that puts your legal rights front and center and helps you navigate the issues that affect your life every day. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. Remember, we want to hear from you, so tweet me at David Lesh and use hashtag AskToday'sVerdict if you have a question. And of course, don't forget to check us out at Bronxnet.tv. In New York, the way employers evaluate job candidates is about to change. Starting April 18th, a new law bans most employers, staffing agencies, and labor organizations from asking about your credit history when hiring, promoting, or making other workplace decisions. That includes credit scores, bankruptcies, collections, and even questions about your financial past. Well, we spoke with Patrick J. Boyd, founder of the Boyd Law Group, about the new rules and what job seekers need to know. Let's take a look. Patrick, welcome, first of all. It's nice to have you.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Everybody wants to know about employment discrimination and employment law, but one particular area that I think we really want to cover today is the hiring process and what's considered discrimination and what's not considered discrimination. Just very broadly, what are your thoughts in terms of when you're hiring somebody, what you can ask, what you can't ask? Where are we right now as a society?
Well, we are in a meaningfully regulated society when it comes to that kind of thing, and there seems to be a new change to the law at least every fiscal quarter, maybe every week, depending on the jurisdiction you're in. In general, there are prohibitions now, which everybody seems to have been caught up with, on asking as to the criminal record of somebody before offering a job. You cannot ask that question beforehand. There are regulations with respect to asking about how much somebody earns in salary. You cannot ask what their previous salary is. And now there's been a new update for the state of New York. The city of New York in 2015 said that employers couldn't ask about the credit of a job applicant, but now the state has adopted that. And as of April, a New York State employer cannot ask an employee about their credit when they're applying for a job.
You would think, just from a general point of view, that you'd want to know if somebody is behind in their payments in terms of credit card debt or whether they filed for bankruptcy. I mean, aren't these things really relevant to the type of person that you'd want working in your company? Why isn't it something that I'm not allowed to know?
Well, I think it's a fair question, but I think it has a fair answer to it also. If somebody has, for example, a criminal record, then the position of the government, which I think is fair, is that, well, that person has dealt with that issue or is dealing with that issue, and that's for the criminal courts to deal with. We want people who have had problems with the law to have second chances, so we don't want employers overly scrutinizing criminal records.
Well, let me just stop you. Let me just stop you for a second, and I completely agree with that. With respect to somebody, in terms of convictions, whatever, you've paid your debt to society, you're back. But let's say that particular person had an ongoing criminal case that hasn't been decided yet. Okay, I'm just using this as an example. Is that any different than having somebody who has an outstanding credit card bill of $50,000 to $100,000 or debts that are still not paid. I mean, that's an ongoing debt.
Correct.
Isn't there, wouldn't you consider that to be a difference as opposed to somebody who's been convicted of a crime, he or she does their time, and now they're in front of you, it's different. You know, it's a clean slate. But somebody who comes to you with a whole host of credit issues, that's not a clean slate. They still owe the money. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, I mean, I agree with you. You're doing a good job as a lawyer of presenting this sort of the barbell argument, right? You take the extreme on one hand or the extreme on the other hand. I think that the law has it right in the following way. It's not as if all employers are prohibited from asking these questions, right? It is the employers where the job of the employee is not likely to tie into finance, where they're not allowed to ask. So, for example, if you're hiring somebody to be the treasurer or the CEO of your company, or if you're hiring somebody perhaps to have a government office where they're going to have a lot of control of finances, then in that case, understanding their financial record, if you will, seems to be important, and the law would permit that to be the case. On the other hand, if you're hiring somebody and the person is going to be, I don't know, doing some architectural work for the design of your home, or maybe being an arborist treating your trees and branches, I don't know, trees and branches of lots of people. I don't know that their credit record has any impact, and I don't know that they should be treated unfairly or have their privacy invaded about that when it has no impact on their job or your liability for them doing their job as the employer.
So what's the standard? How do you know if you're the type of employer that's in this particular area where you can ask the question or you can't ask the question? Is there going to be a set of guidelines that come down?
Yes. Yes, there is. And it's sort of the question is whether there's a reasonable relationship between the financial credit history of the person and the job they're performing, which, as I'm sure you're going to agree, and probably our listeners would agree, is a hard standard to abide by. But what the agencies are also asking is that if you're going to ask for the credit history, then you're supposed to keep files of what their job is, their job title, their job duties, and an explanation of why you asked. And then you have to be prepared to defend yourself or not, based on whether or not you're going to ask for that information. So the prohibition isn't on asking overarchingly. It's the idea that once you ask, you better be able to justify asking, or you could get in trouble.
I ask, in terms of questions of defendants on different cases where I'm deposing them, I will say, don't be insulted, but have you ever been convicted of a crime? Don't be insulted, but have you ever filed for bankruptcy? Because I try and soften it up a little bit, but these are questions in my field that I'm allowed to ask, should I say.
Of course.
So, and they're questions that are allowed to be asked of my client. So I let my client, my own client say, listen, don't be insulted. You're going to get these questions. But if you have somebody who's just sitting in front of you for the first time and you're interviewing them for a job, it's a slippery slope. You don't really, first of all, you want them to be comfortable working with you and not feel that they're being discriminated against either. So it's got to be a very tough area in terms of hiring. That's my thought.
I would agree. I think it's a challenge, I mean, I think one of the unique aspects of this that you have to think about in terms of the practical implications is as follows. I don't think there's going to be a lot of prospective job applicants, right, who ultimately bring claims or frankly who resist inquiries from employers. They want the job, right? So the enforcement of this is likely to be rare.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think what happens is it just works as a prophylactic to employers who might be otherwise maybe brazen in asking for everything under the sun that they can of an employee. At least I think that's the way the people passing the legislation were thinking about it, and I don't think they're wrong in that sense.
When I see some of the guardianship work that's done in the Bronx, certainly when the judges are looking to have a guardian appointed over the person and property, mostly property of somebody, and you can have significant assets there. A very fair question the judges will ask of the potential guardians, whether it's your mom or your uncle or whoever you happen to be, is, how are you with money? Do you have any debts?
Right.
Have you filed for bankruptcy? And they don't get insulted. They understand that. They know it's it goes with the territory with this type of law. But again, that's different. You're dealing with somebody's finances, so you want to make sure that they're on the up and up. But when
That's
it's not that way, and it's just somebody who's coming in and is going to be doing paralegal work for me or something else, it's like I'm like, well, can I ask that question? Can I ask you, what your present financial situation is, and how much have you been making in the past, and are you keeping are your credit cards up to date? It's like anything. You just have to kind of do the best you can and try not to insult the person. I think that's the lesson that I'm taking from it, at least.
I think that's right. I mean, I also think it's, and I don't know if it's in the legislative history of one of these in New York, but it certainly is with some of the other states. And I think there's like 10 states now that prohibit this. But one of the most frequent reasons that people have financial strain and stress these days is not sort of not honoring their credit card bills, right? It tends to be unpaid college tuition,
Yeah.
or bills on their law school, or I think number one is medical expenses. So I think there's a little bit of an unfair bias associated with people who are having financial struggles, and the suggestion that they're dishonest people as a result.
Yeah, because the minute you leave college, you have a debt.
That's right. That's right.
You have the debt, and God forbid you suffer any kind of medical issue and you don't have insurance, or you're just young, you're gonna have a debt. I mean, debts
right.
are part of life.
Yeah.
But we don't want to pry, we don't want to insult people, but at the same time, we have to balance it out. I've asked you these questions before, and I'm going to ask you again. In terms of your crystal ball and where you see we're heading here, are we starting to give a little bit more protection to those who are looking for employment, or are we starting to switch the pendulum again once more back to the employer, where we're going to give the employer the chance to ask whatever they want to ask to protect themselves?
So I'll give you two answers on this, because I feel there's two different regulatory schemes going on at once, right? On the one hand, I think these prohibitions on asking for somebody's salary when they come in, these prohibitions on asking about their criminal record, and these prohibitions on asking on their credit history are giving more freedom to applicants and trying to open up the job market significantly. On the other hand, there's this thing called social media now, and social media now is allowing employers. But I've gotten I got two calls last week from two people who lost their jobs, not for anything they did at work.
They posted something they shouldn't have posted.
But they posted about something political in the weekend on Facebook.
I tell my son that all the time. He's a 15-year-old. You got to be careful. You're putting things out there that somebody, a future college or anyone, can see. So you really have to be careful.
That's right. And just to be clear, these were political opinions, right? Expressed to people that weren't in the workplace, weren't in the workforce, and they weren't even reported by somebody that these clients of ours worked with, right? Just somebody on Facebook took a screenshot of the post and sent it to the employer, who then chose to let them go. And that's completely lawful under the laws of these United States.
That's the new normal, Patrick. I mean, you just live by the sword, die by the sword. You want to be famous, you want to post on social media, you want to let everyone know what you feel, you better get ready, because somebody could take a picture of it and put it out there.
Yeah, well said.
Once again, I want to thank you for joining us. It's always great stuff. Maybe we'll get you in the studio the next time and we could have another chat.
Sounds great. Maybe when it warms up a little bit.
Absolutely. All right, you take care. All right, don't go anywhere, because today's verdict will be back after this short break.
57% of New York City high school students are college ready by their senior year. "55% of high school graduates either have no plans to attend college or are uncertain that they will ever attend. "34% of young adults don't go to college because they can't afford it. Discover what's possible. Bronxnet's education programs, internships, and opportunities help engage and inspire Bronx youth and beyond to pursue their passions. Be a part of the Bronxnet family. Whether you're interested in our shows, joining a class, or donating to support our mission, visit bronxnet.org to learn more.
All right, welcome back to today's verdict. As immigration enforcement continues, many families face uncertainty about their status, their rights, and what the future may hold. Well, for Haitian nationals, temporary protections can offer relief, but the rules and deadlines can be confusing. Meanwhile, immigrants who enter the country without inspection often encounter complex legal hurdles that require careful navigation. Joining us to break down these legal pathways and provide practical guidance is immigration attorney Daniel Drucker. Daniel, thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That's our pleasure. But, you know, our viewers love to discuss immigration, just
Right.
one after the next. The climate now, what do you find? Are things calming down a little bit? Is ICE all over the place? I'm just curious.
Things have seemed to calm down regarding ICE raids after the issues that happened in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So we're not hearing as much about ICE enforcement, even though it's probably still happening. As before, it always happened, but you just didn't hear about the mass raids and
So many of
protests.
the Bronx viewers are always afraid to open doors and to
Yes.
and to go to public places, and they're always asking me like, "What's the vibe?" So, you know, it's something they want to know about.
Yes, I do have clients that come to me and ask me, I have a hearing for either removal, I have a hearing for a marriage case. I'm afraid to appear in court. I'm afraid to appear in an immigration hearing. I tell them I have not seen any instances
seen it.
of ICE showing up and arresting my clients. I know it's happened and the media has really took a hold of it, but I don't think it's something to be worried about.
Well,
in
that's
terms
good to
of,
know.
Yeah, I think people should appear at all their hearings and
Always.
yeah,
I agree.
always, yeah.
Well, let's talk a little about you. Tell us a little about the type of law you practice. The
Sure,
immigration
I
law.
specialize in immigration law. I do mostly family-based immigration. I do some business also. I do removal defense. So kind of a general practitioner. I've been practicing for 23 years out of Jackson Heights, Queens.
Queens, love Queens.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about countries like Haiti.
Sure.
Right? You know, they're persecuted. People are persecuted there, and anything they can do to get to the United States and get away, they get away. And then they apply for some type of protective status. Am I correct?
Correct,
How does that
TPS.
work? Tell me about it.
Well, previously, Haitians were allowed to apply for TPS, and that would give them temporary protected status, which allowed them to get their work permit in this country. And they were living, working here legally for many, many years. And recently, the Trump administration attempted to terminate TPS for Haitians.
On what basis?
On the base, he really didn't have much of a basis, but I guess he's claiming that the issues that Haiti were having no longer exist, that it's no longer a
It's
danger.
safe.
It's safe
Okay, yeah,
but
sure.
to return, which is not true.
Of course not.
No.
I mean, you'd figure giving different people protective status, because if they go back to their countries, they could very well be killed,
Correct.
or imprisoned, or issues like that. It's not as if they're here; they're not even here illegally, right? If they're giving temporary protections, am I correct?
That's correct. They're here. It's a quasi-legal status where they cannot be deported, and they're allowed to work, but there's no path to green card
Why is
status.
that?
Because it's a kind of like a parole. It's a quasi legal entry that the government's giving
Does
them.
anybody get the chance to be able to apply for citizenship out of these TPIs, or not really?
TPS.
sorry.
There was a way in the past to travel on TPS, and then it was called advanced parole, and you leave the country, and then you come back in with a legal entry, and then you could get your eventually get your residence that way. But they're not. The current administration is not granting advanced parole.
So are they getting deported? What's the
Right
story?
now, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals kept a stay of a lower D.C. court in effect. So now TPS is currently still. People that have TPS are currently allowed to keep their TPS until further notice.
But if I came in tomorrow and
You
I
cannot.
said, hey, I want TPS, you can't get
You
it.
can't get it.
It's
No, you
interesting.
can't get it. Yeah.
How about the rest of the country at this point that are here actually illegally?
Yes.
What's going on?
So what I find is many clients come into my office that came in without inspection, usually through the Mexican-U.S. border, and there aren't many options for these clients. Some of them have been here for 20 years, longer. The two major ways we could get green cards for those clients are through a program called Military Parole in Place. That's for immigrants who have a child in the either National
Forces,
Guard or
yeah.
Armed Forces, and that allows them to get. It's kind of a quasi-entry, so it's a parole stamp in their passport.
I would think, if you have a child that's protecting our country, you'd think you'd want the parents to be able to
Correct.
stay here.
And that's why the program's in effect.
What else? What other ways?
And then the other way is it's called an I-601A waiver, and it's for those who have a qualifying relative, meaning a U.S. citizen, spouse, or parent, or a lawful permanent resident, spouse or parent here in this country. And they could apply for, it's called an I-130 petition, and then a waiver, stateside waiver, so they could get the case approved before they go back to their home country and pick up their green card.
Let's talk ICE.
Sure.
All right, everyone's afraid of ICE, right?
Yes.
Sometimes I think ICE is afraid of ICE. What's the generally seems to be what's been going on? I mean, I know you said earlier that they're maybe not knocking on doors as much. Are they still lurking in the hallways?
I believe ICE is still around. They've always been around, just hasn't been as much media attention until fairly recently. I think you need to know your rights. If ICE comes to your door,
What are your rights? Let's hear it.
They need a warrant to enter. They can't just enter. They can't just arrest you without cause. They need to have a reason to detain you.
But what if you're not home? What if you're on the street?
If you're not home, then they're gonna have to find you wherever you are.
Right.
They're not gonna be able to detain you if you're not home.
Now, what's the process once they find you? Where do you go? I mean, I've always wondered these detention centers. Are they in New York? Are they throughout the 5 boroughs?
It's funny you ask. I have a client recently who was detained in New York, and he was kept at 26 Federal Plaza, and then he just got shipped down to South Georgia in the middle of nowhere. And we actually have a bond hearing for him tomorrow afternoon. So they could send you anywhere in the country, and sometimes the immigration judges outside of New York are not so immigrant friendly.
So how do you find out where they are? I mean,
There's an ICE locator online. You could just Google ICE inmate locator, and you put in their A number, which is their alien registration number, or their name and country, and it'll tell you
now,
where
is
they
that,
are.
by the way, just for attorneys, or can anybody find out where their mother, brother, or
Anybody,
sister?
anybody can
Anybody
find
can
that.
find
yes,
out.
Yes.
Okay. Tips. That's really what the clients want to know more than anything else, I'm sure, and that's what the viewers absolutely want to know.
Right.
Right. What rights do they have at this point in terms of being here legally, and can it be revoked, and illegally? Start however you'd like to.
Sure. People that are here with green cards or lawful permanent residents, they could stay here indefinitely, but there are grounds for removal.
There are.
Yes, there are. So controlled substance convictions, firearms convictions, it's called aggravated felony. So serious charges that are convictions could render you removable and put in deportation proceedings. Those without any status, I recommend at least trying to have a spouse file a petition for you, even if it can't go anywhere.
But here's what I
eventually.
want to know: if
Sure.
you file that petition, does that put the person, out in the open to then be picked up? So that's what I'm scared of recommending
Right,
sometimes
right.
to different viewers. Is that something that we want them to be able to do?
I don't think that they're putting approved petitions. I don't think they're referring them to ICE. I think if you get a conviction, a serious conviction, that'll be an ICE
That'll be
referral. A denial of a petition, that could be an ICE referral. But approved cases, I don't see.
I don't think so.
I
Is
don't
there a
think so.
particular area of New York where the ICE seems to be hanging out?
Yes, upstate New York by the
Oh, really?
Canadian border. I've had clients picked up there. You have to be very careful. They have drones, and it's
They use drones.
they do. Yes.
How would they know who's illegal or
Well,
not?
it's a very remote part of the country, and if they see unusual activities, cars with a lot of people in it, or
Really?
people getting picked up in random spots and dropped off, they could stop.
Is that
stop the
because they're
car.
coming from Canada?
They're coming
Is
from Canada into the U.S.
You don't realize it. You think it's the other way, coming from Mexico up here, but
Mexico, there's more from Mexico to the U.S., but from Canada to the U.S. happens also.
where do you see us going as a country in terms of immigration status? You have any?
I'm hoping that there's some
final
kind of immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform for people that have been here for many years, pay taxes, have children here, and they could eventually get a pathway to citizenship. That's my goal, and I think that's what the majority of the country want.
We don't have too much time. Where
Sure.
do we find you?
So you can find me at my website is www.druckerlaw.net,
Okay.
and my phone number is 718-458-1489. So either contact me on the web or call, and those are the best way. I also have Facebook, Drucker Law, and LinkedIn.
You got LinkedIn?
LinkedIn also, yeah.
me
So you can find me.
Well, listen, it was a pleasure having you. And like I said, my viewers really appreciate it when we have
Absolutely.
immigration attorneys on. And maybe you can come back in the next, 6 months or whatever. Give us an
Sure,
update
I'd
of
be
what's
happy to
going
do
on.
that.
Wonderful.
All right.
All right, well, that's all the time we have today. I'd like to thank our guests for sharing their expertise, and of course you, the viewers, for watching. If you missed any part of today's show, be sure to check it out on YouTube. Also remember, if there's a legal issue or topic you'd like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to contact me at davidlesh@bronxnet.org or tweet me at davidlesh, and make sure to use hashtag AskToday'sVerdict. From myself and all of us at Today's Verdict, always remember, know your rights, know your issues, reach a verdict. I'm David Lesh, and we will see you again soon with a new episode of Today's Verdict right here on Bronxnet. You take care.